Alright, 2D here, and we just got the full spoiler for Theros Beyond Death. So I'm going to talk about the top 5 cards I'm most excited for out of the set. Now these aren't my picks for the top 5 most powerful cards to come out of Theros Beyond Death for Standard, but they are the top 5 cards I'm most excited for, and I'll go into the reasons why for each one. So let's hop right in with number 5, which is Vasa, Deep Dwelling. So Vasa, Deep Dwelling is one of the new gods out of Theros. She's got Indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, she's not a creature. And most importantly, at the beginning of your instep, you can exile up to one other target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. And then she's got an activated ability to tap down a creature. So I think Thassa is actually just really good, but I'm most excited about Thassa in a deck I already loved in Standard, which is Blue-White Blink. I've got a video from a couple of months ago where I played this deck, and it was an absolute blast. I've got a video for it if you want to check it out, but it was built around Charming Prince. Charming Prince is one of my favorite cards in Standard right now. After the initial 4-mana investment, Thassa gives you a way to blink your creatures every turn without doing anything. And she gives you immediate value by letting you do it at the beginning of your next end phase. You don't have to wait a whole turn cycle. Thassa allows you to set up some great plays without any more mana investment. Doing something like exiling a Lumbering Battlement on your end step, letting all those creatures out from under it, getting all their end of the battlefield abilities, and then if one of those creatures was a Charming Prince, bouncing the Lumbering Battlement again, exiling all those creatures again, putting them all into the Lumbering Battlement again. I mean, there's tons of value you can be had with this card, and the deck was already tons of fun to play. So Thassa's just going to make it that much better. So outside of the blue-white deck, Thassa's just great in general. I mean, there's just some really fantastic into the battlefield abilities in Standard right now. Things like Agent of Treachery just allow you to take over the game. Like, it takes almost no time at all to, with an Agent of Treachery plus a Thassa to just end the game. And you've got new cards coming out of Theros like Illyrios Enraptured, who is just this great token production machine. Illyrios is already 3 mana for 5/5s worth of stats across 2 bodies, and then you can just keep blinking him to keep making 3/2s, which is pretty above rate for a 3 mana token production. Thassa just powers up so many existing strategies that I love, and to me she's the most exciting god out of Theros Beyond Death. I just can't wait to brew some decks around her. So moving on to number 4 on our list, this is actually a reprint, but it was one of the best cards in Standard during its previous tenure, and that's Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Grey Merchant of Asphodel reads, when Grey Merchant of Asphodel enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, and then you gain that amount of life. And I'm going to cheat a little bit and add another card to this number 4 slot, which is Reverend Hoplite, which in a lot of ways is sort of the white answer to Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Reverend Hoplite reads, when Reverend Hoplite enters the battlefield, create a number of 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens equal to your devotion to white. So I think these two cards are two of the best devotion payoffs in Standard, and they're both uncommon too, which makes them great for budget decks. I do think Grey Merchant of Asphodel is the most powerful of the two. It's just a ton of power to be able to drop Grey Merchant and drain your opponent out of the game pretty easily. It just does not take much to kill your opponent with Grey Merchant of Asphodel. And we've already got some great mono-black devotion payoffs in Standard right now. We've got a Yara, we've got Yarok's Fin Lurker, we have some good black 1-drops, which would just make mono-black devotion a pretty easy deck to build. The existing pieces are already there. With Theros Beyond Death, we've also got Underworld Dreams coming in, which by itself ups your devotion to black up to 3. And it's just another really fun build-around card, so I think there might be an interesting deck to build around combining these two cards, Underworld Dreams plus Grey Merchant of Asphodel, to sort of do a drain-based deck. And even though Reverend Hoplite isn't as powerful, it does allow for some really crazy plays. Cards like Daxos and Heliod combine amazingly with Reverend Hoplite. Like, imagine having Daxos on the battlefield, Heliod the Sun Crown, and then playing Reverend Hoplite. Even just these 3 cards by themselves, your devotion to white is 4. You create 4 1/1s. Daxos is triggered 5 times, you gain 5 life, and then Heliod gets 5 different +1/+1 triggers, so you can put 5 +1/+1 triggers scattered however you feel across your creatures. Like, that is just really powerful. So Grey Merchant and Reverend Hoplite are tied for 4th place on my list for most exciting cards out of Theros Beyond Death. They're just really great build-arounds, and I think Devotion decks are going to be a ton of fun to play. And moving on to number 3 is another super exciting build-around card, which is Nightmare Shepard. Nightmare Shepard is a 4-mana 4/4 flyer. It's an enchantment creature with, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1 and a nightmare in addition to its other types. So Nightmare Shepard just allows for some really fun plays, with cards like Cavalier of Night and God Eternal Bantu. Nightmare Shepard combines great with creatures with Enter the Battlefield abilities. So imagine having a board with Nightmare Shepard on it and a bunch of Enter the Battlefield creatures, then playing God Eternal Bantu. You get to sacrifice all those creatures, draw that many cards, and then you can just bring all those creatures back as 1/1 nightmares, and they get all their enter the battlefield abilities back again. Like, that's just an unbelievable amount of value. In the same vein, combining Cavalier Knight with Nightmare Shepard allows you to just get tons of value. Imagine having a Nightmare Shepard and a Cavalier of Night on the battlefield, and then you play another Cavalier of Night. You get to kill one of your opponent's creatures, sacrifice your first Cavalier of Night. The Cavalier of Night you sacrifice gets its death trigger, brings something back. Then you get to make a token copy of the Cavalier of Night that just died. It gets to kill something else, sacrifice your other Cavalier of Night. Your other Cavalier of Night gets its death trigger, bring something back. Then you get to bring another token of Cavalier of Night onto the battlefield, kill something else, sacrifice something else, bring something else back as a token, and it's just so much value, it's insane. The fact that you don't have to pay any extra mana or do anything besides just exile the creature when it dies to make a token copy makes Nightmare Shepard just an amazing card. It's almost like a Panharmonicon except based around death. There's just a ton of Enter the Battlefield cards in the format that combine well with Nightmare Shepard. Another great one is Plaguecrafter. Just Plaguecrafter by itself enters the battlefield, sacrifices itself, makes your opponent sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker, and then you can bring it back as a token and make an opponent sacrifice another creature or planeswalker. Another important interaction is with Shatter the Sky. Shatter the Sky I think is going to be very highly played. It's a 4-mana Wrath. I think it's going to be all over the place in Standard. And Nightmare Shepard just allows you to kind of blanket. Like if you just have a bunch of creatures with enter the battlefield abilities on the board, and you have a Nightmare Shepard, and your opponent wants to Wrath you, they do kill all your creatures and they come back smaller, but they're still coming back, and you get all those enter the battlefield abilities too. So it's sort of Wrath protection. You could even use like Shatter the Sky in a deck with Nightmare Shepard, with the idea being it's sort of a one-sided Wrath. You kill all your opponent's stuff, but your stuff comes back as 1/1 Nightmares, and you get all the enter the battlefield triggers all over again. So I think it's an important interaction that Nightmare Shepard interacts favorably with Shatter the Sky. It gives you an edge against control decks that are going to be really using Shatter the Sky heavily. So that's what puts Nightmare Shepard at number 3 in our list. Just tons of high value combos in the format. Just an awesome build around card, and a card that provides some great built-in protection against one of the best cards in the format. So moving on to number 2 in our list for the most exciting cards out of Theros Beyond Death for Standard is a card I think is going to define a budget archetype. And that's Iona, Captain of the Pylias. So Iona reads, when Iona enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards from among your library. You may reveal an aura card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in any random order. She also has, whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Top 7 cards at the top of your deck pretty much means you are never going to miss if you're running a decent amount of auras. And Iona wouldn't be that exciting to me, except we also got another reprint in this set, Heliod's Pilgrim. These 2 cards combined effectively mean you have 8 copies of a card that say, when you enter the battlefield, search an aura out of your deck. Because 7 is just so deep, it is pretty close to a search effect. You're almost definitely going to find an aura with Iona, and it's probably going to be your choice of the aura that best suits the situation. And Heliod's Pilgrim just straight up searches one, so you'll always hit exactly what you need with her. So with the backbone provided with these 2 cards, there's just so many directions you could go. You could use this backbone to build a Bogles deck, with cards like Paradise Druid and Sentinel's Mark to build your own hexproof 2-drop, and then finding something like All That Glitters to make your Boggle gigantic. Or you could go completely different directions. You could go into Bant and play Staggering Insight. We've seen a card very much like Staggering Insight before with Curious Obsession. Curious Obsession looked like it was nothing much, but by itself it created one of the strongest decks in the format. And Staggering Insight is Curious Obsession with an upside that costs 2 mana. So I think undervaluing this kind of ability for a second time would not be wise. You could also go into White, Green, Black with Abzan and take advantage of the new aura removal spells we have. Things like Mire's Grasp, things like Deadweight. Things that typically would be spell effects in other formats, but have been made into auras specifically to take advantage of Theros' enchantment theme. You can really go into sort of a mid-rangey value deck with this sort of plan, where you're counting on Iona and Heliod's Program to basically draw you into removal spells. And then stepping away from those more adventurous plans, you could just go straight up Enchantress with cards like Setessan Champion and Wolfwillow Haven, allowing you to just stick in white-green and just have tons of value. Playing creatures that get you auras, to play auras that draw you cards, to get creatures to make more auras, and just going off like crazy. Just having this card advantage show that you can really take advantage of with these 2 cards puts it at number 2 on my list. There's just so many decks I can't wait to brew around Iona. And I think Iona would be at my number 1 just because of her flexibility, but there's one card that I just can't help but put at number 1. And that card is my favorite card out of the set, Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths. So Atris is a 4-mana 3/2 with Menace that reads, when Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths enters the battlefield, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So Atris is just a Fact or Fiction, and Fact or Fiction is my favorite card in all of Magic, so I am just thrilled with Atris. Like, I know really Atris is more of a Fortune's Favor than a Fact or Fiction, but in terms of power level, Atris feels a lot closer to Fact or Fiction for me. Getting a 3/2 body attached to this ability just makes it so much better than Fortune's Favor was. Atris does my favorite thing in Magic, which is to provide you with choices. It's the reason why I love Charming Prince so much right now, and the reason why I think Atris is going to be my favorite card in Standard is it provides you with such an interesting choice every time it enters the battlefield. Your opponent has to try to trick you. Your opponent has to give you an option face up that's enticing enough that you won't pick whatever they put face down. They can try to bluff you. They can try to just put something god-awful face down, put two really great things face up, and you'll be thinking, wow, if they put these two cards face up, what could be face down, you know? Will I take the mystery box? It could be something even better than these two cards. And when you pick it, then you'll cry. Just allowing for that interaction, having such an interesting choice every time it enters the battlefield, to me makes Atris the most exciting card to come out of Theros Beyond Death. And being attached to a creature means Atris has all kinds of other synergies. We were just talking about Vasa Deep Dwelling, and being able to blink Atris every single turn with Vasa seems like the most fun you can have in Standard to me. There's also Blood for Bones, which will allow us to sacrifice Atris, bring it back to the battlefield, and continue looping him over and over again for tons of value. And important to note, whichever cards you don't pick with Atris go into your graveyard, so that's even more fuel for your Blood for Bones, and it really makes this engine come online. And continuing down that line of thinking of capitalizing on Atris putting cards into your graveyard, it's great fuel for escape. Like, imagine playing Atris and your opponent seeing a Kroxa. Like, what do? Like, no matter which option your opponent gives you with something like Kroxa, you're happy. If you pick the pile that puts it into your hand, you get to play Kroxa for its regular cost, but if they put it into your graveyard, you get to just escape it back. Same thing for Pelukranos. You're really happy with either option. You either have this 4-drop 6/6 that's going to start mowing down your opponent's creatures, or it goes into your graveyard and it'll come back as a 12/12. So there's all sorts of synergies with Atris. The fact that he's basically a Fact or Fiction on legs means there's all sorts of recursion and all sorts of ways you can continually reuse his ability, and Fact or Fiction being my favorite card in all of Magic makes him my #1 pick for the most exciting card to come out of Theros Beyond Death. So those are my top 5 picks for the most exciting cards to come out of Theros Beyond Death for Standard. I just can't wait to build all sorts of fun brews around these. It's just, I'm so excited for this set. I can't wait to play a Blink deck with Vasa. I can't wait to drain people out with Grey Merchant. I can't wait to have all this recursive value with Nightmare Shepard. I can't wait to have this new aura-based green-white skeleton to build all sorts of decks around with Iona. And Atris is going to be an absolute blast. I'll probably just spend a few weeks at the beginning of the format just finding every way to loop Atris as much as I possibly can, because I love this ability. So anyway, those are my top 5 picks. Let me know if there's any you think I left out, or let me know if you have some different top 5 picks. If you're excited for Vasa, Grey Merchant, Nightmare Shepard, Iona, or Atris like I am, or if there's something else you're even more excited for. Anyway, that wraps it up. I can't wait for pre-release next weekend. I'm definitely going to be doing some sealed events on my channel, so tune in if you like those. And thanks for watching. See you next time.